A biting wind cuts through the heart of the Kremlin these days, but it's not winter's chill. Instead, a storm is brewing, a storm that shatters Vladimir Putin's carefully crafted plans. For months, he relied on the belief that the West was exhausted, that Ukraine would soon fall, and that his nuclear threats would hold back any decisive action. But recent developments from Berlin, London, and Paris have overturned everything. What was once considered a red line, using nuclear blackmail to prevent European intervention, no longer stands as a barrier. Now, the unthinkable is becoming reality. European troops are preparing to step onto Ukrainian soil. Yes, you heard that right. The European Union has reignited the debate over deploying a peacekeeping force, and this time, it's a joint effort. This isn't just a symbolic show of support, it's a ground invasion that could redefine the entire continent's future. Led by the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Berlin has shed its previous reluctance. It's racing alongside Paris and London to send troops into Ukraine. Prime Minister Keir Starmer of Britain confirmed that his soldiers are ready to deploy as soon as the fighting ceases. The coordinated push forms a powerful three-pronged spear aimed at breaking Putin's time is on our side doctrine. Moscow now faces more than just a depleted Ukrainian army, a resilient resistance backed by Europe's industrial strength and military might. Russia's seized assets form a war chest, while Europe's elite troops stand at the borders, poised for action. Putin had hoped to convert Trump's peace plan into a surrender agreement. But instead, he finds himself confronted by a united Europe, armed and alert, equipped with cutting-edge missiles, determined to defend Ukraine with its own soldiers. What was supposed to be a victory march for Russia is rapidly transforming into a strategic encirclement. Yet, the Kremlin hierarchy seems blind to the danger. It has yet to grasp how grave the situation has become. The hardening stance from the West is rewriting the rules of the game. The question is, how long can Putin hold when the entire continent turns against him? The showdown has begun, and the tides are turning fast. In a bitter chill sweeping through the Kremlin, where a fierce wind carries not just winter's bite but the sting of shattered illusions, Vladimir Putin's calculations crumble under the weight of Europe's resolve. He banked on a weary West and a crumbling Ukraine, yet Berlin, London, and Paris have ignited a firestorm, turning the impossible boots on the ground into reality. The European bloc stands armed to the teeth, wielding cutting-edge missiles, and pledges its soldiers to shield Ukraine against the onslaught. What Moscow envisioned as a triumphant march is morphing into a suffocating encirclement, though the Kremlin's denial echoes deafeningly, blind to the abyss ahead. Can you fathom the audacity? European troops poised to march into Ukraine's heart, not as invaders but as saviors, rewriting the war's brutal script and humbling Putin's empire in humiliation that leaves the air thick with the acrid scent of defeat. Yet, the whispered denials from the Kremlin only deepen the dread. Sergei Lavrov, voice trembling with false bravado, lashes out, accusing the West of corruptly twisting Trump's elusive peace plan and poisoning fragile talks. He boasts defiantly that, despite swarms of Western outlets flooding global screens, the masses cling to RT and Sputnik's shadowed narratives. But touch the raw truth beneath those words. Russia's regime recoils, refusing to acknowledge the ironclad might surging from Europe, a tidal wave crashing down on Putin and Ukraine's embattled lands. And now, what dark alchemy has forged Europe's unbreakable alliance, morphing Putin's fantasies into a waking nightmare? How will a European army's bold incursion redraw the map, shattering empires and igniting reckonings? Watch as the veil lifts on your screen, revealing a storm unchained. Dive in, if you dare. Central to this seismic upheaval is that cryptic peace blueprint, forged in clandestine whispers between Washington and Moscow, only to be warped irreparably by Europe's defiant hand. It began with a 28-point ultimatum, catering to Putin's ravenous desires, sealing Ukraine from NATO's embrace, gutting its military might. Putin salivated, seeing it as Kiev's unspoken capitulation. But behind guarded doors in Geneva and Abu Dhabi, a fierce diplomatic duel raged, transforming that treacherous text into a bitter elixir Russia chokes on. From European shadows, the 28-point pact once branded a surrender blueprint has resurrected as a streamlined 19-point fortress of safeguards, bolstering Ukraine's grip with unyielding force. Enter the Volunteers' Confederation. Emmanuel Macron's gaze steely, Keir Starmer's words cutting, they unveiled a brutal verity. Parchment promises won't halt Putin's wheels, only the cold steel of guns and the thunderous roar of artillery hold that power. A shattering blow from the EU, this heralds the clearest stride toward unleashing peacekeeping legions into Ukraine. So, what role beckons for this European titan in Ukraine's fray? No crude clash of titans, mind you, this is a masterful stratagem far beyond doomsday headlines of outright war.
French and British warriors won't storm Russian lines head-on, not yet, at least. Their core mission? Fortify Ukraine's vulnerable flanks.
Imagine these elite forces fanning out to pivotal hubs like Kiev and Odessa, with a razor focus on the Belarusian frontier.
Here's the brilliance, pulsing with tactical genius.
Even now, swarms of Ukraine's finest fighters, thousands upon thousands, languish in the north, muscles taut, senses heightened by the eerie rustle of leaves and distant border whispers, bracing for Belarus's phantom strike. But with European guardians etched as a northern bulwark, those elite brigades unleash, surging east toward Donbass, tipping the scales overnight in a whirlwind of reclaimed territory and echoing gunfire. Meanwhile, Macron dubs it the air assurance vanguard, a clandestine vow to cocoon Ukraine's skies.
Essentially,
etching a no-fly zone into reality, where Russian warheads confront not merely Ukraine's defenses, but Europe's pinnacle interceptors, sensors humming, alerts piercing the tense air with shrill alarms.
And the twist that stuns? Germany rises from decades of trepidation, Chancellor Friedrich Merz igniting a phoenix rebirth.
A staggering 56% of Germans, their voices rallying like thunder, endorse troop deployments post-peace, jolting the pacifist lull into a warrior's awakening, feeling the icy Russian menace breathe down their necks. While generals sketch Operation Plan Germany, mobilizing 800,000 troops for 2024 to shore NATO's eastern walls, Berlin morphs from bystander to orchestrator, fingers trembling yet resolute on the trigger.
Even Putin couldn't foresee this European monolith, welded in iron, rallying behind Ukraine. His scheme?
Isolate Kiev, fracture NATO, neuter its defenses.
Instead,
he stares at a unified continent, soldiers deployed, morphing Ukraine into a NATO bastion, a security ultimatum smashed against Europe's unbreachable rampart. If European shields formed the defense, Germany's looming aid packages wield the spear, ending months of hemming on Taurus deliveries with Merz's unshakable decree.
Taurus cruise missiles? A heart stab for Russia, poised to arm Ukraine.
With 500-kilometer outreach, these behemoths obliterate not just battle lines but logistics veins, command nests, even Moscow's fringes, smashing subterranean bunkers and fortifications like the Kerch Bridge, fraying Crimea's lifeline in a symphony of explosive fury.
Yet, it's not solitary. Ukraine forges its flamingo arsenals domestically, reaching 3,000 kilometers, fueled by German coffers, birthing independence amid factory clangs and oily forge scents.
Picture Taurus and Flamingo fusing in tandem, a twin-strike deluge engulfing Crimea and Russia's vital cores, the air vibrating with launch roars and distant tremors.
Funding such arsenal? The EU unchains its purse.
Germany pours €3 billion extra into 2026 budgets, fusing fresh ammo, swarms of drones, Patriot system renewals.
Accelerating claims on seized Russian funds, 300 billion interests, funneled to Kiev.
Irony bites, Putin's hoarded wealth fuels the same weaponry shredding his armies, a fiscal humiliation echoing through halls of despair. Piecing it together paints Putin's total impasse. He aimed to repel NATO from his doorstep, his plunder drew them in, soldiers nesting under Russia's watchful glare. Russia's reserves bleed dry, losing a full division monthly.
Despite wartime overhauls, faltering in Europe's aggregate siege.
Putin dismissed it as European bluster, yet they retaliate by freezing €210 billion, dispatching forces, inverting the chessboard.
Russia spirals, insulated internationally, pummeled by its gold, ringed by NATO-grade armies. Ukraine evolves, bolstered by EU might.
Nuclear specters no longer rattle the West, they harden resolve. Across the ocean, Europe's bold gambit reshifts Washington's stance, with Trump.
But wait, what seismic jolt from Berlin could humiliate Putin's throne beyond measure?
A chancellor awakening Germany from slumber, transforming cowards into conquerors, their boots already thundering on Ukraine's soil.
Will this forged alliance crush the Kremlin, or unleash a vortex of unseen horrors? Stay tuned, as the next revelation could shatter everything you know. A new era is unfolding.
Europe is transforming from a hesitant observer to a decisive player on Ukraine's battlefield.
Instead of direct clashes, sophisticated strategic moves are now shaping the conflict.
Imagine the battlefield constrained behind a nearly invisible shield, Europe's forces securing vital strategic centers like Kiev and Odessa, pushing towards the Belarusian border.
The masterstroke?
The deployment of these forces to act as a northern protective barrier.
Tens of thousands of elite Ukrainian soldiers are currently idle in the north, awaiting a possible attack from Belarus. But what if Europe's peacekeepers take their place? As this northern shield settles in, Ukraine's top brigades can be repositioned entirely to the east, in Donbass.
Overnight, the balance of power could tilt, shifting the tide in Ukraine's favor, a move with the potential to change everything. Meanwhile, a different mission takes shape: air protection.
French President Emmanuel Macron has outlined a plan to establish a de facto no-fly zone.
From now on, Ukrainian skies won't be solely defended by their own systems. Europe's most advanced air defense will stand guard, confronting Russian missiles directly. The smell of burning fuel, the sound of distant explosions, and ever-present reminder of escalating stakes are now joined by the hum of fighter jets patrolling the skies. And then a startling revelation emerged from Germany. A country long paralyzed by pacifist sentiment is now taking bold steps. Over half of the German population, 56%, approves of sending troops to Ukraine if peace is brokered. The quiet, hesitant nation is awakening. Its generals are drafting. Operation Germany plans to send 800,000 soldiers in 2024, boosting NATO's eastern defenses.
The shift is seismic. Could Berlin truly become a key player? Even Vladimir Putin might not have anticipated such a united front. His strategy was clear: split NATO, isolate Ukraine, disarm Kiev.
Yet, the scene has turned upside down. Europe now stands united, ready to enforce its own safety, turning Putin's calculations into chaos. The Kremlin's illusions of control are crumbling beneath the weight of this collective resolve. But here's where the story takes a turn, because behind the scenes, a hidden game is unfolding. A secret peace plan was supposedly crafted between Washington and Moscow, a 28-point blueprint that promised to keep Ukraine out of NATO and scale back its military.
Putin saw this as Ukraine's surrender, a capitulation wrapped in diplomatic paper. Yet, the dialogue in Geneva and Abu Dhabi twisted this plan into an unrecognizable form: an 8-point security framework designed to strengthen Ukraine, not weaken it. Now, the question hangs heavy: will this revised plan finally bring peace, or set off a new chain of upheavals?
The answer could lie hidden in the next move, in the shadows of diplomatic halls where every word could ignite or extinguish hope.
And just as the world's eyes are fixed on Ukraine, a more dangerous question arises: what if Putin's next move is even more daring? Could the thresholds of conflict be pushed further? Or is Europe about to reveal its true strength, in a way that even Putin never saw coming? Just imagine the sting of betrayal as Putin's grand plan crumbled under Europe's iron grip.
The leader who dreamed of isolating Ukraine and fracturing NATO now faced a fortress rising against him. Europe's soldiers, shields against aggression, paved the way for a sharper sting, weapons that pierce deep.
What if I told you Germany just handed Ukraine a weapon so deadly it could shatter Russia's heart from afar?
Picture the Kremlin's icy walls trembling at the thought of Taurus cruise missiles, unleashed at last after years of heated debates. Chancellor Friedrich Merz stood firm, slashing through reluctance with a decisive blade. No longer just peacekeepers, Germany plunges a venomous dagger straight into the enemy's core, arming Ukraine to strike boldly. These Taurus beasts stretch across 500 kilometers, their wings slicing through the air with a low, menacing hum that echoes doom for frontline troops. But they don't stop there. Logistical hubs crumble under their explosive fury, command centers erased in thunderous blasts, even grazing Moscow's outskirts in theoretical horror. Feel the vibration through your bones, the acrid smoke curling like despair. Their genius lies in obliterating hidden bunkers, fortified havens, like the Kerch Bridge, that lifeline to Crimea now teetering on collapse. Russia's supply chains fray thin, whispers of disconnection spreading through frozen plains.
Yet, it's not alone. Ukraine forges its own Flamingo missiles, reaching a staggering 3,000 kilometers, each engineered domestically with German gold fueling independence. Smell the forge's heat.
Hear the clang of hammers shaping destiny, turning armed reliance into sovereign strength. Picture these spectral weapons pairing up, Taurus and Flamingo dancing in lethal harmony. A dual barrage erupts, no Russian corner safe from the sprawling devastation. Crimea burns first, strategic urban hearts explode in fiery retribution, headlines screaming from the ashes of Moscow's prized grounds. How does it feel, Putin, to watch your empire ignited by your own seized fortune, millions flowing back to arm the very forces you curse? Poised to crush Russia's siege? But fear grips the air. What twisted secrets lurk beneath Washington's gaze as Europe charges ahead, rewriting war's brutal code? Will the next missile strike be the one that silences Putin's roar forever? Can you believe it? Europe's shockwaves are still rippling through the Kremlin's icy halls, where the air hangs heavy with the acrid tang of desperation, the distant rumble of artillery echoing like thunder in Putin's nightmares. Just imagine missiles streaking through Ukrainian skies, forging a deadly path that leaves no Russian stronghold untouched, from Crimea's sun-baked shores to the very heart of Moscow's shadowed streets. Flashback to earlier this year, in a dimly lit chamber reeking of stale cigar smoke and sweat-soaked uniforms, where Putin leaned over maps that promised conquest, his fingers tracing lines of victory that now feel like chains binding his empire. As Ukraine wields its newfound arsenal, the looming question of funding casts a shadow darker than a winter's eve. How will these weapons fly without the gold to fuel them? Enter the European Union, stepping into the breach with unflinching resolve. They've flung open their coffers wide, rolling out billions like a torrent of aid to drown Moscow's ambitions. Germany alone pledges an extra €3 billion in its 22-6 budget, a lifeline pumping fresh life into Ukraine's defenses. Picture the harsh clang of artillery shells loading with renewed vigor, the electric hum of drones buzzing to life, awakened from slumber. Patriot's air defense systems stand tall again, their steel frames gleaming under repair lights, shields against the storm. But the twist deepens, fans of intrigue prepare yourself. The EU's masterstroke? Accelerating plans to funnel the interest from Russia's frozen fortune, roughly $300 billion, to Kiev directly. Feel the bitter irony sting, Putin's own hoarded wealth, locked away in distant vaults with the cold snap of sanctions, now arming the very forces that claw at his empire's flesh. It's a humiliating blow, a slap that echoes through the corridors of power, where defeats compound into an economic abyss. Weave these threads together: troops, missiles, money, and the tapestry reveals Vladimir Putin's strategic gobsmack, a noose tightening around his plans. He invaded to shove NATO back, to redraw borders in his favor, like a bully claiming turf through brute force. Yet, in a cruel reversal, his missteps have lured alliance partners right to Ukraine's doorstep, boots poised to plant themselves smack against Russia's sensitive skin. Diagripolical ly pariah, economical ly bleeding from his own coffers, military ly encircled by forces gleaming with NATO precision. What sorcery sustains Russia's faltering might? How can Putin's iron grip withstand this armored avalanche? The truth is brutal: Russia's reservoirs of war power are draining faster than blood from a wound. Intelligence whispers of divisions evaporating monthly, soldiers lost to the grind, while their economy, twisted into a war machine, sputters under the weight of Europe's unrelenting barrage. Putin scoffed at the West's bluffs, mistaking resolve for jest. But oh, how the tide has turned: €210 billion of Russian funds seized, troops mobilized, the battlefield upended. Now, stare into the abyss of isolation. Moscow stands alone, its nuclear sabers, once wielders of terror, now blunt instruments that only harden foes' spines. In their stead, a modernized Ukrainian army rises, bolstered by EU steel, ready to pivot the scales of fate. Is this the end of Putin's reign, or just the scream before the storm? A recent shift in global power dynamics has left the world stunned. You might ask, how did a once independent Russia become a pawn in China's economic game? The answer lies in a cascade of strategic moves fueled by Western sanctions, energy shortages, and a desperate need for survival. The scene is set. A cold wind blows through the Kremlin, stark, unforgiving, and filled with uncertainty. Vladimir Putin had expected unwavering support from Beijing, assuming China would stand as an ally in his darkest hour. Instead, he encounters cautious silence and uneasy calm far from loyalty. Beijing now serves as Moscow's economic anchor, protector, and technology provider, an unlikely alliance forged in mutual disdain for Western dominance. In exchange, Russia supplies cheap energy, raw materials at discount prices, and unwavering obedience in diplomatic matters. This reversal in global hierarchy marks a seismic shift. Russia, once a proud superpower, now orbits a rising China, its economic dependency deepening with each passing day. For decades, Russian officials boasted about remaining independent from Beijing. Yet, their actions tell a different story. Since Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, Western sanctions pushed Moscow toward China's embrace. The invasion of Ukraine in 2022 intensified this bond. Cut off from Western markets and banking systems, Russia's lifeline became China's economy. Today, over a third of Russia's exports are crude oil sold at steep discounts to Chinese buyers. The yuan now replaces dollars for cross-border trade, and Chinese companies step in to fill the technological void.
From smartphones to industrial machinery, Beijing's influence grows, squeezing Moscow into a dependence it cannot shake.
But look closer, these arrangements are hardly equitable. Beijing dictates prices and payment terms, often leveraging Moscow's isolation to secure advantageous deals.
The Siberian pipeline, once celebrated as a symbol of strategic cooperation, now symbolizes Moscow's subservience.
Instead of reaching global markets, Russian energy flows to a single buyer, China, whose pressure stalls plans for a second pipeline. This dependency stifles Russia's ambitions.
The nation that once boasted of energy independence now finds its main exports governed by Beijing. The proud superpower's sovereignty is increasingly compromised. Yet, questions remain: will this economic captivity lead to political capitulation? Or can Russia break free from this outsized reliance? The answer will shape not just Russia's future, but the entire geopolitical landscape.
As Beijing tightens its grip, the world watches. The balance of global influence hangs in the shadows of these silent, decisive moves, an intricate dance where power is bought and sold in the currency of dependency.
The story is far from over. What new alliances will emerge? Will the Kremlin find a way to regain independence? Or is this the beginning of a new era where global giants like China define the rules?
The stakes have never been higher. Silence reigns, but beneath it, the drums of transformation beat louder than ever. A bitter chill sweeps through the Kremlin, not from winter's grip, but from icy dread creeping into Putin's core.
The West's fatigue. Ukraine's collapse, these pillars of his strategy, shattered by whispers from Berlin, London, Paris. Nuclear threats once held Europe in check. Now, they're obsolete.
European boots, marching onto Ukrainian soil.
Yes, you heard that right.
The EU revives peacekeeping troops, a united front. Not mere words, but warriors reshaping the continent.
Led by Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Berlin shed its fears, joining Paris and London in a sprint to defend Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in his huddle with Zelensky, pledged UK soldiers, ready to land post-battle.
This trio, with France's might, dismantles Putin's time is on our side illusion. Russia faces no crumbling Ukrainian forces, but a bulwark of Europe's industry, armories, seized funds, poised like a storm cloud at the border. Building on Europe's shocking pivot from words to weapons, the turmoil deepens in Putin's mind, as a clandestine peace draft morphs under hidden diplomacy. That 28-point blueprint, crafted in Washington and Moscow, once favored Putin, barring Ukraine from NATO, shrinking its defenses. He saw it as Kiev's capitulation, a rubber stamp on defeat. Yet, relentless talks in Geneva and Abu Dhabi twisted it into a bitter pill. European spies label it a surrender script, now reborn as a 19-point shield, bolstering Ukraine's resolve. What sparks rage in Moscow, turning dreams to nightmares? The volunteer coalition's stark truth: paper pledges won't halt Putin, only steel and fire will. This bold EU gambit pushes peacekeeping troops forward. But what will these warriors accomplish in Ukraine? No reckless clashes with Russian lines, at least yet. Their aim, Ukraine's vulnerable underbelly. Strategic hubs like Kiev, Odessa, and the Belarusian frontier beckon their presence. The brilliance unfolds here. Echoing the coalition's armored resolve, the plot thickens with Germany's startling metamorphosis. Frozen by old fears, Berlin now embraces Chancellor Friedrich Merz's boldness. 56% of Germans, over half, back troops entering Ukraine after peace. Society stirs from pacifist dreams, sensing Russia's shadow near. Generals unveil Operation Plan Germany, dispatching 800,000 soldiers by 2024 for NATO's eastern ramparts. From sidelines to stages, Germans claim center spotlight. Even Putin couldn't foresee Europe's bonds, turning Ukraine into a NATO fortress. His isolation strategy backfires, colliding with a steel wall. As Germany's warriors unsettle the balance, fresh arms ignite fury in the Kremlin. If European shields guard Ukraine, these packages are the lethal strike. Taurus missiles, debated for ages, now flow forth. Range of 500 kilometers, they target not trenches, but Russia's lifelines, bunkers, even Moscow's edges. They crush tunnels, bridges like Kerch, fraying Crimea's ties. Domestically forged Flamingo missiles, spanning 3,000 kilometers, amplify the assault. Simultaneous launches, dual nightmares for Russia.
Crimea, core cities, bleed. Fueling this arsenal's terror. EU coffers swing open wide. Germany adds €3 billion to its 2026 budget for Ukraine. More shells, drones. Patriot defenses. Frozen assets, $300 billion, their yields channeled to Kiev. Putin's hoarded wealth, arming strikes against his own. A mercenary turn, economic humiliation bites. Layer upon layer. Putin's encirclement solidifies. He invaded to shove NATO backward. Instead, troops entrench under Russia's gaze. Russia's ranks erode, divisions vanish monthly. Militarily parched, diplomatically adrift, economically bled by their own seizures. Even nuclear bluffs lose edge. Citizens rally against him. Across oceans. Europe's vigor reshapes Washington's path. Amid Putin's predatory gaze on Asia, the empire's fall accelerates. Shunned by West. Russia clings to yuan loans from Shanghai and Shenzhen banks. Sanctions sideline, but China doles smart tech, chips, drones, and EV aids, propping defense. Yet, Beijing curbs aid to dodge U.S. wrath. Moscow brags alliance, but Chinese reins tighten. Pipelines stall, prices dictated by Beijing, once energy giant Russia bargains from weakness. Main exports sold under Beijing's terms, not Moscow's decrees. From this dependency, Russia's isolation looms. Army stranded, reliant on North Korea's worn stockpiles. Reversing course? Slim chance for Putin. Ukraine's war, a seismic rift. No more viewing Europe as frail. America apathetic. Ukraine isolated. Alliance stands firm, soldiers deployed, lines blurred. Checkmating Russia head-on. German tanks. UK-French boots. US fervor, form Ukraine's unyielding circle. Putin's conquest fantasy, dissolved in resolve. Question morphs, how long can Ukraine endure? 2. How long until Russia crumbles? History honors the bold, this season. Europe ignites its flame. Follow this global upheaval, fronts boil, powers quake, you're here. A storm is brewing across the global stage, and the outcome could change history itself. As tensions escalate, nations are positioning themselves for a clash that could redefine power dynamics forever. Are we witnessing the beginning of a new era, one shaped by unprecedented alliances and strategic moves that leave no one untouched? Prepare yourself, because the truth is more shocking than you can imagine. This unfolding drama with growing concern. Over half of Germany's population now sees China as a major economic threat. The message is clear: threaten our security, and we will cut ties. Fearing the collapse of their lucrative European market, China is hesitant to openly support Russia militarily. They understand that their future depends on careful diplomacy. As Europe's resolve hardens and the global landscape shifts, the question remains: will Putin's strategy crumble under mounting pressure or pull off an unexpected maneuver? The answer is hidden just beyond the horizon, waiting to unfold. A chilling frost grips the halls of power, where old threats once echoed like thunder. Yet now, those echoes fade, replaced by a steely calm that chills the air even more. Remember how Europe shattered Russia's isolation by freezing vast assets, striking back economically with Moscow's own frozen fortunes, and encircling its forces with a modernized Ukrainian military backed by the EU's unyielding might? That encirclement tightens like a vice, squeezing hope from the Kremlin. But has the Kremlin's once feared nuclear warnings lost their bite in the grand capitals of the West? Do they still send shivers through marble corridors lined with frantic aides? No longer do these veiled threats sow chaos in places like Paris or London. Instead, they forge an iron will, hardening resolve like steel in a blazing forge. The air there hums with determination, the scent of polished boots and urgent whispers filling briefing rooms. What stirs across the vast Atlantic, where waves crash against the shores of a superpower? Europe's bold surge forward, unexpected as a storm breaking over calm seas, ripples all the way to Washington. Picture the humid tension in the Oval Office, where leather chairs creak under the weight of decisions. Donald Trump, a man who craves dominance like a predator scents prey, despises any whiff of frailty. This fierce European backbone propping up Ukraine blocks his path to easy deals with Putin. It tugs at him, doesn't it? Forces his hand away from concessions that smell of defeat. And the streets of America?
They boil over with raw energy, the clamor rising from concrete jungles.
This unfolding drama with growing concern.
From the sun-baked boulevards of Los Angeles to the foggy harbors of Boston, from New York's towering shadows to Washington's monumental steps, crowds swell like a human tide. Tens of thousands march, banners fluttering in the wind like defiant flags, their voices a roaring wave against any peace that bends to Russia's will.
Chants pierce the air, sharp and unrelenting, carrying the sting of betrayal.
Even voices from Trump's own ranks hurl barbs, accusing favoritism toward Putin, their words landing like punches in a heated debate. This groundswell drags the White House toward a harder line, one that pulses with support for Ukraine's fight.
Feel the shift?
Trump's envoy, Marco Rubio, steps into the fray at a gathering of willing allies, his words slicing through the room like a keen blade. He calls the discussions glowing with promise, the clearest sign yet that America nods approval to this fresh European shield of security. For now, Trump might frame it as his triumph, claiming he reigned in Putin alongside Europe's giants. But watch closely, over time, his team's footing will harden further, digging in like roots in unyielding soil. Imagine the power if the United States and the European Union lock arms in this dance.
Russia's path ahead? It twists into thorns, far more treacherous than before.
Putin might pivot his gaze eastward, toward the vast Pacific's misty horizons, seeking shadows to hide in. What of his so-called partners, those distant allies whispering loyalties? North Korea strains to show its devotion, shipping soldiers and shells across frozen tundras.
Their footsteps crunching in the snow. Yet this aid?
It's a mere ripple in a pond, dwarfed by Europe's roaring industrial engine, humming with factories belching steam and sparks.
And China?
Beijing hovers on the edge, eyes narrowed in the dim light of strategy rooms, where silk scrolls rustle softly. Worry etches their faces. 59% of Germans now see China as a looming economic shadow, dark and oppressive.
Europe's unyielding front against Russia beams a warning across the globe. Our bridges of trade will burn if you endanger our peace. The fear of shuttered European markets, vast and lucrative, ties China's hands.
No bold military aid flows to Moscow, just cautious glances and withheld thunder.
But as alliances fracture like cracking ice, what desperate gambit will Putin unleash next to claw back control?